Welcome back to another episode of the Seattle Sports Show, where we love Seattle pro sports. I'm your host, Mikey, and today we are here to talk about the Seattle Seahawks 2025 NFL Draft and give them a grade. And you saw the thumbnail already. You saw the title of this podcast already. This is an A plus from me. This was a fantastic draft, and in this episode we're going to get into why. I love that they addressed almost every single thing I wanted them to address in this draft, and they addressed most of those things at the time that I was predicting that they were going to address them. So you can go look and you'll see that all the players that I predicted, they weren't all the, I didn't get all the players right, but I got the, I got the needs right. I got what they should be going for, what I wanted them to be going for, and what they went for was what I wanted them to go for. So, I'm very happy with this draft. And we got a lot of athletic freaks in this draft, which I absolutely love. I mean, if I'm going to have players out there on the field, I want them to be athletic, and if you can get me the most athletic players possible and tell me they are still productive at the same time, they're not just combine freaks, they're actually athletic freaks that produce on the field, then I absolutely love that. And with our first overall pick at pick number 18 overall, that's exactly what we did. We went and got our guard of the future, Ray Zabel, and I absolutely love that pick. Again, we all are able to breathe a sigh of relief after that pick. That offensive line has finally been addressed, and it's been addressed early in the draft, especially at the offensive guard position has finally been addressed early in the draft, so that we're not just picking up scrap heaps in the middle and the end of the draft. We're not, selecting defensive linemen and hoping to convert them to offensive linemen at this point in the draft. We're taking a solid offensive lineman who can play any of the positions, and selecting him to be a guard at this point in the draft. The guy is just amazing. He plays with strength and he's athletic. Watch this guy get to the second level, and watch how quickly he can get to the second level and block effectively. You're gonna love seeing that in this Clint Kubiak system. You are going to just love hearing from this guy in general. I've already listened to a few of his post-draft interviews, or even at the draft, when they asked him, what are you going to do to celebrate? And he said, I'm about to dive in and crush a ton of these Busch Lights. That was hilarious. When he was on the radio this week and they asked him about, you're, offensive lineman, you're a big guy already, but, you might still be able to gain another 10, 15 pounds if they asked you to do that. Would you be able to do that? And he says, oh yeah, gaining weight's easy. All you do is steaks and squats. I absolutely love that answer. Love steaks, love squats. So I love that's his answer to gaining weight, and that's how simple it is for him. Just absolutely love the pick. Again, go watch this guy's highlights tapes, and when you do, you're going to see why the running backs on this team are going to really appreciate Gray Zabel being here. You're going to see why quarterbacks for the Seahawks are going to be really glad that Gray Zabel is here. So loved that pick. That's an A+ for me. Now, my goodness, John Schneider almost tipped his hand a little too much after night one, after the first round press conference. John Schneider and Mike McDonald are sitting down for the post round one press conference. John Schneider almost straight out comes out and says that, oh, there's still players with the first round grade still somehow available in the second round, right? He's like, oh, I'm really surprised by the way things happened in round one here. We still have. Then he's like, oh, wait a minute, there's still guys who we really like. He had to catch himself. You know, he didn't want to say how excited he was, because then he might have had to give up even more. But yeah, it was the same case for me with Nick Emmanwori still on the board in the second round. I thought that was a fantastic move. You see the guy, that's your guy, you make a move to get him. They make that trade. You know, yeah, they gave up a third round pick as well, but again, I'm telling you, you're getting a guy that is first round talent in the second round. Yeah, you give up one of your 2 third round picks to move up to get him. Fantastic move. Loved that trade up. Nick Emmanwori is, you know, people think about his size, right? And they want to make the instant comparison to Cam Chancellor, also coached by Cam Chancellor's coach. So easy to make the connection there, right? So that's makes sense. And Cam Chancellor is my favorite member of the Legion of Boom. So you know, I love that comparison. But you know, the comparison I think you really want to make is Kyle Hamilton, that Mike McDonald coached in Baltimore. I mean, Nick Emmanwori, yeah, he is that size, but he's not a big thumper like Cam Chancellor was. But man, he is athletic and he can get after the ball. This guy has great ball skills. He can play the ball. He can, you know, he's got the hands to get interceptions. You know, so he's got a little bit more of that in him. And you know, even though he's not, like I said, he's not as big of a hitter as Cam Chancellor was, you're still going to see this guy be able to play up in the box, downhill on run plays as well, and help in the run game. You're going to love to see it. All right, and then our next pick, we got a lot of picks throughout this draft that are value picks based off of players with, you know, either coming off of injury or having injury history. And that's what we did with our next pick at number 50 overall with Elijah Arroyo, tight end. All right, again, this is you know, if you watched, again, didn't get to do as many this year as I was hoping, but if you saw some of my mocks, I would regularly address tight end needs around this area of the draft, and they did so here. Some of the guys I really wanted them to have, all of them were off the board already. Now, Elijah Arroyo is somebody I never actually even did in any of my mocks because, you know, all the guys that went before in the mocks, they were still there, so I was able to take those guys. And Elijah, since we haven't talked about him, there was potential for this guy to be a first round pick, but he spent 2 years injured, so that's going to affect you. Now he gets the 1 year this last year, healthy, and has a breakout season. And if you watch this guy, you're gonna love to see that in the tight end position, because he's a receiver. This will be your receiving tight end. He can block, on the move. He's not going to be your inline blocking tight end, but he can be a move blocker, and that'll be fine, because what you get out of the receiving end of this guy is insane. Again, you're talking about like a 6'5", 250 pound guy that has speed, like legitimate receiver speed. Okay, there's going to be receivers in this draft. There's receivers in the NFL right now that are going to run just as fast as Elijah runs just as fast as, I should say, and those receivers in the NFL are receivers. So he's got that type of speed in the tight end position, and if you get the ball in his hands, he's got breakaway speed at the tight end position, and at that size, that's going to be really fun to watch. Again, for this one, I do have questions. The first two picks are A++++. That's going to get you the A+++ already in this draft. Now this one, again, I do have questions, and I was curious about the pick because there were still a couple, even with a lot of tight ends I liked already off the board, there was a couple other ones that I still liked that were still available, but I have to assume the Seahawks doctor said, yeah, it's okay to take this guy, so I'm going to trust them and say, all right, let's see it. And if the guy stays healthy, it's going to be fun to watch. Now, somebody else that's going to be really fun to watch came in round 3 at pick 92. Quarterback Jalen Milroe. You saw in my final mock draft that I posted, the mock draft before the draft, saying this is what I hope the Seahawks do. You saw me say that I would be willing to take Jalen Milroe with the 50th overall pick. That's how far I had come around on him. When I started my scouting process, I didn't like him. Then I came around all the way up to the point where I'm saying I would take this guy in the second round. Because yes, he is a project, but the athletic ability this guy has and uses on the field is insane, okay? This is not an Anthony Richardson where, yes, this guy has a huge arm, and yes, he can run really fast. But Anthony Richardson can basically only throw it on a rope. No touch, nothing like that. Jalen Milroe, he can make throws with touch. He needs to do it more consistently, but the evidence is there on tape that he can do that. Somebody like Anthony Richardson, yes, he can run really fast, but he just runs straight ahead, runs straight into guys, doesn't look like a running back. He just looks like he's a big guy that can run into people. And sometimes he's fast enough to run away from them. Not Jalen Milroe. He's a big, fast guy that looks like he has vision, and he uses that vision like a running back. And he sets up the blocks. He sets up defenders to miss. The guy is insanely good at running the ball as well. That right there is going to be, such a weapon for the Seahawks. And I like what Mike McDonald said already, that they're saying, no, this guy is a quarterback through and through. They're going to have him play quarterback. They're going to develop him to become a, full-time starting quarterback at some point in his career. But as of right now, Sam Darnold's still the starting guy, but you will see Jalen Milroe on the field this year. taking snaps at quarterback, being on the field in different situations to take advantage of his elite skill sets, whether that is to come in and run the ball, or to come in and make the defense think he's going to run the ball, tighten up, and then just have this guy unleash this insanely strong arm he has and be able to throw the ball 60 yards down the field and go deep on you when they thought they were about to the Seahawks are about to try a run. Absolutely love it. Again, to me, this is a steal in the draft. At this point in the draft, you want this kind of guy to finish developing him, right? I mean, everybody's already been talking about it. Well, of course, his passing percentage accuracy percentages was higher than Anthony Richardson in college, but also higher than Josh Allen, also higher than Lamar Jackson. You know, this guy had in the 60s completion percentage. Now, you will watch and you will see that, yes, he is not an accurate passer. Because even with that completion percentage, those passes are sometimes, even the ones he's completing, they're still not accurate enough. You're watching and you're saying, okay, you're leaving yards on the field by not putting it in an accurate position for your receiver to they take advantage of open field in front of them, because the receiver has to jump up or dive or whatever. So if he can get a little bit more accurate, that would be great. If he can, make some better decisions, that would be great. And I think he can, he's a academic Heisman Award winner. So I think he's got the smarts to be able to figure that out. Because you see him actually going through progressions. He just sometimes makes the decision a little too fast. So I think he's got all the tools. He's got the right mindset, and I think he could really be something. And if he is, again, we'll be talking again another third rounder, just like Russell Wilson. If he does develop into this starting quarterback, we'll be talking about him the same way we did Russell Wilson, where we can't believe we got such a steal at that point in the draft. All right, the next one. Now, they announced him as defensive tackle here at pick 142. But what I am loving about this right now is the Seahawks say no, and they list him at defensive end. Riley Mills out of Notre Dame. Okay? Big boy, all right? This is what I love about Mike McDonald too, and the way he, the kind of players that he likes to have in his system. Riley Mills is an athletic defensive tackle who they list now as defensive end, that they will move around the defensive line, because if you go watch Riley Mills play in college, you're going to see that he lines up in all different positions across the defensive line, and if they're planning on using him at defensive end more than anything else, then I love it, because you're going to see, these days a lot of defensive ends, or you might see them listed as edge. They're smaller guys. You might see guys as low as 250 pounds playing this edge / defensive end position. Guys, it's pretty average for them to be 260 to 270, somewhere in that range, right? Well, no. Riley Mills is 300 pounds, and he still has pass rush moves that you can have out there at the end. I love it. And again, especially if we're going to get the type of defensive line, mixing around that Mike McDonald likes to do, putting all the defensive linemen in different positions, confusing the offensive line on knowing where the pass rush is coming from, who's stunting, who's twisting, all this. Oh man, this is going to be fun to see with him. Now, this is another one, had an injury, right? Knee injury. I believe it was ACL, but a player who the doctors say, and I yeah, I'm going to trust the Seahawks doctors. If they say he's going to be ready by training camp and he's, ahead of schedule, then I think that's a steal. If Riley Mills didn't get injured, we're not talking about Riley Mills as a 5th round pick. We're talking about him as a 2nd or 3rd round pick in the draft. So, great one. Okay, here we go again. Going with the same type of deal. Another player coming off of injury. With our next pick at 166, wide receiver Torrey Horton. Great pick. Another receiver now. Now we have our young guy who is the big receiver, who is a big, fast receiver, big target that can go deep down the field. And at this point, he could be competing to play or some sort of return, whether it's kick returns or punt returns or both. He could be competing for that position because right now we do have JSN, we do have Cooper Kupp, we do have MVS, so he's going to have to compete with those guys to be 3rd or 4th on the depth chart. But he's an amazing punt returner, so that could be another use for him. And again, young guy who's going to be learning Clint Kubiak's system, and we already saw what Clint Kubiak can get out of MVS. I would think that he could get the same sort of production out of Torrey Horton. So again, look at all the names that we've gone through so far. All super athletic for their position and their size as well. That is fun. Now, next one. Another one that we changed the position. Listed in college as tight end, but we drafted him and we instantly changed that listing to fullback. Robbie Outsts. Or Outsts. I'm not sure how you say it exactly. But okay, you're talking about a 6'5", 275-pound man that can play tight end. But you also see him lining up at fullback a ton. Seems like that's what they want him to do the most, so that you basically have just an undersized tackle, basically. And that's basically what he was in college, right? Whenever he'd line up at tight end position, it's mostly blocking, right? An undersized lineman, an extra one that you would have out there for blocking situations, on run blocking, pass blocking, or lining up in the fullback position again to run block, and he can move. Again, athletic, or what we are now going to call a fullback. He's going to be athletic for a guy that size who's playing fullback and can get out and linemen are be setting those blocks on the first level. You're going to get Robbie Outs onto the second level setting blocks. You're talking about this 275-pound man setting blocks on corners, coming in on what linebackers these days. A lot of them play in the 220s. He's going to obliterate them, and it's going to be fun to watch. Okay, and then at pick 192, we went and got another guard, Bryce Cabeldew. Again, here we go. Here, a guy that athletic. All right, we're talking about a guy that plays tackle, but we're going to be moving him to guard. And a lot of coaches say, what do they, if they could have players who played tackle all across their line, that would be the ideal situation, because that means you're getting the best of they were the best linemen on their team. Because of the best linemen, they're always going to get them to play at the tackle position. They're going to have that combination of size, speed, and power. So you get a guy here that should be competing for that right guard spot, and you know, at worst, he's going to be a depth piece for you that can play guard or tackle if you need. So I like that. Because again, we needed more competition for that room, and we need more depth. So again, another thing that I was hoping they would address, you know, by not just taking one lineman, they did it. They addressed it by taking multiple linemen. Now the next pick was running back Damian Martinez that we got at pick 223. Okay, all, you know, I saw so many predictions. A lot of people thought this guy was going third or fourth round. So again, another guy that we are getting a steal, and another player here who is a big running back for the position these days. You know, and even calls himself Beast 2.0. You like that, right? You know, but you know, so you know, he's not going to be the, you know, you might come to your mind and you think like, oh, that means he's like a battering ram of a running back, but no, you know, that wasn't Marshawn Lynch. He wasn't just a battering ram. Like, he was also elusive. And that's what you get out of Damian Martinez too, the combination of elusiveness and power. And yeah, this guy's he's going to be competing. He's going to be giving a run for the money for playing time. You know, it's not. This isn't your typical like, oh, 7th round pick, we'll see if they make the team. No, Damian Martinez, he's making the team, and he's going to be competing for playing time, like right out the gate. So you'll love to see that pick, and you know, and now you have him for the next 4 years, because you know, K9's on his last year. Charbonnet's only got 2 years left, and you got to decide what you want to do with those guys. But you have somebody like this that has this much talent that you got this late. Gotta love that value. All right, then we got guard Mason Richmond. Somebody also I was not really familiar with. Had to look up more about him, and you know, it's more depth to me. When I see this, I watched what I watched and said, okay, good, another player, add more depth and competition for this offensive line, because again, most of it wasn't good, and you needed more competition, because you want competition for the depth as well, because you want, if very often multiple linemen get hurt every year, right? So you don't want just the starter to be good. You want the depth. You want the backups to be good. So I'm just so glad that they addressed that in the in the draft here, and they did that, because we were all panicking all offseason long about how they did not address it at all in the agency. So just very happy that they that they did that. Now, here's a huge steal as well at pick 238, and this is something, again, you saw me do this a million times. I guess not a million times, because I didn't get to do as many mocks as I want, but you saw me do it in the mocks, right? When I get to this part of the draft, I'm looking for you know, the need I was always looking for was a receiver, usually a receiver, sometimes a corner, but most of the time I was looking for a receiver that could fill receiver depth, and also fill a need on special teams. That's what you're getting out of Ricky White the third. You know, he will be a receiver that has depth, or that adds depth to your wide receiver room, but a very dynamic returner. And again, another player here that I thought was going to go fourth or fifth round. So you're getting here seventh in the seventh round, a player who can really play receiver and be out there for you as a receiver if you decide to go with that many receivers out there on the field at once, which you will have to do sometimes, I'm sure, or that you will want to do sometimes for sure. And again, a guy that can return punts and kicks for you and do it in a dynamic way. So we got a couple guys in this draft that are very effective returners, and we all know the disaster that was last season. So it's good to have guys who feel confident at one, just at least catching the ball. So you feel confident you have guys that are going to catch the ball, but when they do, you have the idea in the back of your head that could actually be a very exciting return as well. So there you go. That was the last pick in the draft, and again, for me, A++. All of these guys really athletic. All of these guys big. Yeah, I like them big boys. That's what I love in football. I like watching the big boys crash into each other, and a lot of our guys are going to be bigger boys than the other team's bigger boys, and when we crash into them, we're going to knock them down, and it's going to be fun to watch. Right. For real. I'm not kidding, and I'm serious. That I wouldn't just throw a grade out there like that if I didn't mean it. You saw my grade. If you were watching over on the old channel, you saw my grade that I gave the Seahawks last year. I gave them a B+, and a lot of people wanted to give me a hard time about that, but I think it bore out to be true, right? Like we got a couple of guys that contributed, and we got Byron Murphy. That was a good pick, but we didn't get all the value that we could out of last year's draft. I mean, too many guys didn't contribute or got cut, but this one, I see a lot of these guys being able to contribute or at least add meaningful depth to the roster. The only thing that they didn't address that I was hoping they would address is the defensive nose tackle position. Didn't address it in the draft. Doesn't seem like it's been addressed in the undrafted free agents that they've signed so far. But again, they at least address defensive line with Mills. I guess one other position I was looking for as well was cornerback depth. So they didn't get that, but we already know that Shaquille Griffin has been visiting again with the Seahawks, that he's been back and visited. So it looks like they didn't find a guy that would fall to them in the draft that they wanted, so they can easily pivot to that, and I think that will be okay. So the biggest one that I have the question about, because I don't know what they're going to do, is for the nose tackle position, and I was really hoping they would do that so that we could get the most out of Byron Murphy, our first pick the previous draft, because I'm still looking to see him get the production that we're hoping that he can get, and I think he's gonna, they're gonna have to not play him at nose tackle if we want to see him get the kind of production that they said this guy could produce, and I still believe he could, but it's gonna be, he's gonna need somebody playing that nose tackle position for him so that he can do what he has the potential to do. But I mean, with everything else that we did and how many steals we got, and just the potential that we're getting out of just our first 4 picks alone, you instantly address and improve your offensive line. You get an elite defensive player that can help this defense get to an elite level, at, elite top 5 level is what we're talking about. You get a tight end who can be your actual receiving threat tight end, and you get a quarterback that could potentially be your quarterback for the next 15 years to come. He could be your franchise quarterback, future Hall of Fame quarterback if you develop him. And it sounds like they have a plan to develop him. They're gonna get him in there and playing, but not rush him. So I like everything they're doing. A+++ this year. Let me know what you thought of this draft. Let me know in the comments. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you know when all these episodes come out. And until next time, go Hawks.